Let's get straight to the breaking news. The letter signed by 50 Republican national security experts opposing Donald Trump. Our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash, has details. Dana, these are people who've held key positions in Republican administrations spanning from Richard Nixon to George W. Bush.
That's right, Wolf, and I just talked to two people who signed this letter who told me there were a flurry of calls and emails among these officials in the last 2 weeks, especially the past 5 days or so, alarmed over a series of Donald Trump's comments, especially about Russia, that made them join together and speak out against their own candidate. A who's who in the Republican foreign policy world, coordinating an unprecedented effort to stop their party's nominee from winning the White House. 50 former GOP national security officials signing a letter saying, quote, Donald Trump is not qualified to be president and commander-in-chief. Indeed, we are convinced that he would be a dangerous president and would put at risk our national security and well-being. Some high-profile officials, like former CIA Director Michael Hayden and former Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff, have expressed concerns about Trump before. But nothing like this forum. 50 like-minded foreign policy experts, many of them non-politicians, coming together to say they're not wild about Hillary Clinton, but warning Trump, in control of the nuclear arsenal, makes them alarmed. Quote, we are convinced that in the Oval Office, he would be the most reckless president in American history. The letter was released just as Trump was finishing his speech in Detroit aimed at trying to alleviate concerns those GOP national security experts voiced, like lack of self-control. Usually when Trump is interrupted by protesters, he insults them. Today, his economic policy speech was disrupted 14 times, but he bit his tongue, except to say this.
The Bernie Sanders people had far more energy and spirit, I will say that.
After a tumultuous week, it was Trump's attempt to get back to basics.
We need to stop believing in politicians and start believing in our great country.
A detailed economic policy speech, but with a more fundamental goal, reminding voters he's an outsider, eager to disrupt a broken system.
Our party has chosen to make new history by selecting a nominee from the outside, and that's outside of the very, very already proven rigged system.
Trump made sure to re-up his core anti-trade populist messages his campaign believes could play well in places like hard-hit Michigan.
American cars will travel the roads. American planes will connect our cities. And American ships will patrol the seas.
But he also used his speech to the Detroit Economic Club business people to talk tax cuts and court college-educated, wealthier GOP voters that polls show Trump may be at risk of losing.
We're reducing your taxes from 35% to 15%.
Trump even dumped his own tax reform proposal, wiped it from his website, and adopted the House Republican plan.
My plan will reduce the current number of brackets from 7 to 3 and dramatically streamline the process.
And he warned GOP voters considering voting for Hillary Clinton about her plans.
Hillary Clinton, who has spent her career voting for tax increases, plans another massive job-killing $1.3 trillion tax increase.
CNN's poll of polls shows Clinton with a whopping 10-point lead over Trump. To turn that around, Trump has to bring college-educated women back into his column. He hopes his new tax break for childcare, developed with his daughter Ivanka, will help.
By allowing parents to fully deduct the average cost of childcare spending from their taxes.
Now, we just got in a lengthy statement from the Trump campaign responding to the letter that went out today that we started the story with, 50 Republican foreign policy experts saying that Donald Trump is too dangerous to be president. And I'm going to read you the statement from the Trump campaign. Quote, the names on this letter are the ones the American people should look to for answers on why the world is a mess. And we thank them for coming forward so everyone in the country knows who deserves the blame for making the world such a dangerous place. It goes on to say they're They are nothing more than the failed Washington elite looking to hold onto their power, and it's time that they are held accountable for their actions. These insiders, along with Hillary Clinton, are the owners of the disastrous decisions to invade Iraq, allow Americans to die in Benghazi, and they are the ones who allowed the rise of ISIS. Yet despite these failures, they think they are entitled to use their favor, trading to land taxpayer-funded government contracts and speaking fees. It's time we put our foot down and declare that their gravy train is over. No longer will crooked Hillary Clinton and the other disasters in Washington get rich at our expense. And Wolf, this statement also talks about his vision for the country, which Donald Trump is saying it is one that is not going to be run by a ruling dynasty.
Strong response from Donald Trump's campaign to this letter from these 50 Republican national security advisors. Much more on this coming up. Dana, thank you. Meanwhile, the House Speaker Paul Ryan is campaigning in his home state of Wisconsin ahead of tomorrow's primary election there, but his re-election bid has been overshadowed by tension with Donald Trump, who delayed his endorsement of Ryan until just last week. Just as the speaker delayed his backing of Trump a few months back. Our senior political reporter, Manu Raju, is in Wisconsin for us tonight. Manu, is Ryan in any serious danger of losing this race tomorrow?
No, it doesn't appear that way, Wolf. In fact, if Paul Nehlen, who's Paul Ryan's primary challenger, wins tomorrow, it could be one of the biggest upsets in political history. Nehlen does not have nearly the institutional support or the financial support that Paul Ryan has. But even so, Ryan is not taking this super lightly. He's advertised at least 3 times here in this district talking about his record, and he's been meeting with voters, including today. He had 2 events this afternoon that press was allowed to go to, and he spoke to voters about a variety of issues, including one that he has been hit on from the right, on trade. Paul Ryan has expressed support for international trade deals. He championed the push for fast-track trade authority. But he said today he's concerned about the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He does not think it has the votes in the House to pass, and he said that it needs to be renegotiated, even though he said that he supports greater involvement, engagement in the world internationally. So some recognition by Paul Ryan of concerns over this very hot-button issue in his district, Wolf.
Manu Raju in Wisconsin for us. An important election tomorrow. Thank you very much. Let's get some more on all of this. Joining us now, Republican Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Absolutely, Wolf. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start with that letter from 50 Republican national security officials pledging not to vote for Trump. Among other things, they said, I'll read it to you, he's unable or unwilling to separate truth from falsehood. He does not encourage conflicting views. He lacks self-control and acts impetuously. He cannot tolerate personal criticism. He has alarmed our closest allies with his erratic behavior. All of these are dangerous qualities in an individual who aspires to be president and commander-in-chief with command of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. So how does he correct that? These aren't Democrats who are saying this. These are all Republican national security advisors.
First off, Wolf, I don't think that Republican or Democrat voters know who these people are. Voters are going to go to the polls in November, and they're going to vote on Hillary Clinton's record and Donald Trump's vision for America. Voters are going to look at what Hillary Clinton has done. And when you talk about reckless and dangerous, someone who for 13 hours leaves 4 people to die in Benghazi, someone who has a private server and exposes our secrets, or allows the rise of ISIS, cuts a bad deal with Iran, that's dangerous for our country. That's reckless. Leading from behind, Wolf, is reckless. Americans will look at that policy and look at what Donald Trump is saying about how we fix the Middle East. They won't give a darn what these no-name folks are saying. They're going to look at the policies of the 2 candidates. So though it's a good news story, I don't think it's going to play much in the minds of the American voter. They'll look to the 2 candidates and make their decision based on their visions that are laid out in policy speeches and rallies. But
you say no name, Congressman. Take a look at some of these names. Michael Chertoff, former Secretary of Homeland Security. Michael Hayden, former Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, former Director of the NSA, the National Security Agency. Take a look at this. John Negroponte, the Director of National Intelligence. Tom Ridge, the former Secretary of Homeland Security. All Republicans, all worked for Republican presidents. These are significant national security figures.
and I shouldn't say no name. You and I know who they are. People who are involved deeply in politics know who they are. But I think the average voter doesn't know who these guys are and really doesn't care about their opinions. And I think the Trump statement was a good one in that these are some of the same people who brought us the Iraq War that so many Americans, the left and the right, are angry about. It's been oftentimes their failed foreign policy that is in conjunction with Hillary Clinton's failed policy that America now rejects, which has allowed for the rise of Donald Trump. And so that they've come out and attacked Donald, I think actually could be a benefit because I think people look at his vision, his straight talk, and his willingness to call it the way he sees it as a breath of fresh air for our country, as opposed to the same policies, the same people, the same viewpoint that has allowed the world to blow up and leave us less safe and less secure. They don't want that. They want a new vision and a new leader.
Just moments ago, the Trump campaign responded with their own statement saying the people who signed this letter, the Republican national security figures, are responsible for, quote, why the world is a mess. As you know, many of these officials served in the Bush administration. Donald Trump said his administration would be run, quote, would not be run by a ruling family dynasty. Is Donald Trump now blaming George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush for today's national security problems?
Well, listen, I think he has in the past, and maybe he is in that statement. You know, I think some people upon reflection might look back to the Iraq War and say it was a bad idea. But you got to give George Bush credit and these advisors because they buttoned down Iraq and Afghanistan and turned it over in a pretty good shape to Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and they've absolutely let the thing blow up. And the Middle East is now on fire. So, Wolf, I think you have to recognize one other point here. Washington is a small town. And a lot of these folks like access to power. They like access to provide their ideas and their information to the leaders, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. These folks have no pathway into the Donald Trump organization, and they don't like it. And so there's a little bit of a lash out here. But to compare Hillary Clinton's record to Donald Trump's statement and call Donald Trump reckless as opposed to Hillary Clinton is absolutely nutty. Hillary Clinton is the one with the horrible burning pants on fire record that has left America less safe.
A lot of these 50 national security advisors, if you look at them, they're at the end of their careers. They have no desire to go back and serve in the U.S. government. So to suggest, Congressman, that they're frustrated because Donald Trump doesn't want them in his national security team, I think would be inaccurate given their histories, where they were, and what their intentions are down the road.
But Wolf, I don't think they're looking for a full-time job, but they like to give advice. And no one ever retires when you've given your life to foreign policy. You always want to have a seat at the table. And so too do these folks. But I think the real issue here is Donald Trump gave a great economic speech today. These guys, these 50, came out and dumped this letter to trump a great conversation all day about his vision about how you actually grow our economy. Instead of talking about that, a lot of the news networks are now talking about this letter. I think that was the real play and the real shame of releasing it on a day where Donald Trump was going to talk about how do we grow middle-class family incomes? How do we put people back to work? How do you reduce taxes and rules and regulations so we can grow our economy and make us strong again, as opposed to policies that are the trickle-up economic policies of Obama that have absolutely destroyed our economy. If you grow your government and your taxes and your rules and your regulations, it never works. Look at Detroit. Look at Chicago. You can go to Argentina. You can go to Brazil. You can go to Cuba. These socialist policies always fail. So to go back to the policies that we've used in our past of free enterprise, having smart rules and regulations and smart taxes to grow our economy, that should be the message of the day that these guys are stepping on.
Congressman, we heard Mr. Trump say today that under his plan, there would be 3 income tax brackets. The highest, 33%. Right now, it's about 39%. The second highest, 25%, and 12%. Do voters have the right to know what Donald Trump has been paying in taxes over the years?
I think what they have the right to know is, has he paid his taxes consistent with the law? But listen, Wolf, I heard you earlier on the show. I think he should release his taxes. I think he should. I think Hillary Clinton should also release her emails. She should also release the donors to the Clinton Foundation. I think transparency in government is the best. And so emails, Clinton Foundation, and Donald Trump's tax records, those things together, I think the American people should have it, because I think they can consider that when they go to the voting booth about, what decisions have each of these individuals made, and it's relevant.
I think she has released the donors to the Clinton Foundation. What she hasn't released are the transcripts of the speeches she gave to Goldman Sachs, some of the big corporations on Wall Street that were paying her huge honorariums. I think is that the point you were trying to make?
Well, no, but I think there are some donors. All the donors have not been released to the Clinton Foundation. But you are right. She hasn't released the transcripts of those speeches. So, again, I think we deserve all the information about these candidates that we can get our hands on to make an educated vote in November. You're right. All
right, stand by, Congressman. There's more to discuss. We have more questions with Sean Duffy right after this. The breaking news this hour, Donald Trump now responding to 50 leading Republican national security experts who signed a letter denouncing the GOP nominee. Trump just released a lengthy statement of his own saying those critics are responsible, along with Hillary Clinton, for the war in Iraq, the rise of ISIS, and more. We're back with the Republican Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. Congressman Evan McMullin, not a well-known figure, a former CIA operative who once served as a chief policy director for House Republicans. He has now announced that he will run as an independent for president of the United States. He may actually be on the ballot in a few states. How concerned are you, as somebody who supports the Trump campaign, about this, that he could drain Republican votes, and if it's close in the state, let's say in Utah, for example, he could hurt Trump?
Evan is a good guy and a smart guy, but this is the last dying gasp of the Never Trump movement. I'm sure they went to 150 different people trying to see if they would jump in and run for president, and in the end they got to a staffer in the House who was willing to put his name on the ballot. Good guy, I like him, but there's no hope here. I know they don't like that Donald Trump is the nominee, but the bottom line is Donald Trump is the nominee, and there's a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And to try to tank that right now, I think is a foolish errand and will be unsuccessful.
I want to get your response to this, because the chairman of the what's called the American Nazi Party has praised Donald Trump for bringing what he called white supremacist rhetoric into mainstream politics. We've seen continued support for his campaign from some of these hate groups, if you will. So what does that mean for your party? What's your reaction when you see this?
Well, I got to tell you, you can't help people that endorse you. You don't ask for them, and it's a free country. People can endorse whatever candidate that they like. I would tell you that Donald Trump doesn't endorse them, even though they endorse him. But I thought was unique is today, to push back against that endorsement, when Donald Trump was in Detroit, he's talking to the African-American community, saying, listen, Obama has been a disaster for your economy. There's higher unemployment, lower wages, less opportunity. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to make sure that your kids get a job, that your young people have opportunity, and you can put food on the table again in Detroit. I'm fighting for you. So just what Donald Trump even said today on economics would push back against some kind of a Nazi endorsement.
Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin, thanks very much.
Hey, Wolf, have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you. Breaking news, we're following Donald Trump. He's now firing back at dozens of Republican national security experts denouncing his presidential campaign. Plus,